Hey everybody, there's something that I have come to understand really clearly in the last couple weeks, and that is that something that we tend to do as human beings is we rely on a default emotion to deal with the things that come up in our life. And I have an amazing friend. She's a Jungian psychotherapist who is just really brilliant at what she does. And we were talking with her about emotions, and primarily at that time we were talking about anger. And because that's the emotion, the default emotion that I deal with. And she was talking about that in essence, really there are only a few basic primary emotions that we really feel that are truly the raw emotions that we feel as human beings. But what happens is we tend to be afraid of experiencing those emotions, and so we go to a default emotion. So I might be really sad or lonely or whatever that basic primary emotion is. And then I'll jump to my anger, because that's what I've learned to use to deal with those raw emotions that really get to the core of what's going on for me, or for any human being as we go through that. And so let me just tell you what happened a couple weeks ago that really just peeled open this whole idea of why I tend to fall on my anger, but also how to overcome it. And that was the juicy part of this whole experience, was finally getting clarity from within myself on how to overcome it. Because, so let me just jump in. So a few weeks ago I was really angry, and that's something that is very typical for me. Some people will do something very small and it will shoot me through the roof. And I noticed as time has gone on, and this is why it's gotten scarier for me, that as time goes on, smaller and smaller things will trigger me. And so after this particular episode, I had this huge rush of anger. I mean, where I feel it viscerally in my body, and I think I'm all great and powerful, and I feel just super, energized. But then it's just like an addiction, really. After the fact, it's like this crash. And so what kicks in there is I feel guilty that I lashed out, I'm ashamed. And then I start asking myself, why do I keep getting so angry? And it's almost like this little excuse to keep myself in anger. But I remember I was walking around this particular day saying to myself, why do I keep getting so angry? Why do I keep getting so angry? Why do I keep getting so angry? As if there was something outside of myself that I was going to blame. And just as loud as I was screaming that in my head, another voice came in my head and said, literally, stop asking that question. And it caught me off guard, because I don't normally have those kind of moments where there's like these two voices that are clashing in my head for each other. But that day, it was really strong. And it took me so much off guard that I remember specifically saying that I needed to go, telling my kids that I need to go have some time down in my yoga room, my meditation room, because I had to sit with that for a minute. So as I was sitting there, I was pondering on that thought. Stop asking myself that question. And then I said, well, what do I do from here? I mean, what am I supposed to do? And there were three key things that came to my thoughts from that experience that truthfully I think we can apply across the board, no matter what your default emotion is, whether it's depression, disappointment, resentment, because most of the time our default emotion is a negative emotion, and it sends out a lot of juice, a lot of negative juice out into the universe around us. Because I think, first off, I think many of us feel guilty to even really have joy or happiness as our default emotion. There are, I think, few people out there that really can grasp that and fall into that default emotion. But putting that aside, so I was sitting there asking myself this, and this thought came into my head. First off, your desire. My desire. I have to have a desire to overcome it. I have to have a desire to go through it. And that desire has to come from within me. It cannot be something that somebody tells me I have to do, because the moment I start listening to other people, I get into this what I call shooting on myself. And then it starts to become about everybody else. But it has to come from within, because it's my default emotion. And the moment I let somebody else tell me that's something I have to deal with, then that's when I start to get angry again, because I don't want people telling me what to do. So for me, it was coming back to the space of, do I have a desire to overcome this? And for me, at the moment, it was a resounding, yes, I do. I want to overcome this, because it's something that really, I feel, debilitates my life. It weakens me in so many ways. So the desire's there. The second thought that came to my mind was, what is it that you want? And it actually stopped me for a while, because that was the hardest question at that time, because I didn't know what I wanted. And I started to think to myself, okay, what is it? That's a good question, actually. What do I want in my relationships? What do I want in my yoga practice? What do I want with in my marital relationship? What do I want in my career? What do I want? And I realized that sometimes what happens here for a lot of us is we do know what we want, but for whatever reason, life happens or experiences happen, and we don't want to get hurt anymore. So the hope goes down, the hope dies out, and so that's when the default emotions come into play. And not only do the default emotions come into play, when the rush of that default emotion comes into play, it's almost like, well, now I've got to go to a default behavior. So now I get stuck in addictions. I get stuck in, it can be, maybe I eat too much. Maybe I go to binging and purging. Maybe I go to drugs or alcohol. Maybe I check out in other ways. I mean, whatever it is for you. So getting clear about what I wanted was key. But because my desire was so strong to overcome my anger, I really started to believe that it was possible, because it was there. So again, that brought me back to, okay, I'm starting to see the light come on again, that yes, this is what I want. And the more I thought about it, this was amazing. The more I thought about it, the clearer it started to come. This didn't happen in just a 5-minute sitting. I'm not saying that I sat there for 5 minutes and then, oh, I got struck by this enlightenment and then I knew everything. But these questions did come in that space. But since then, I've kind of had a chance to think about it more. And so from my experience, that as I've started asking myself what I want, and really it takes a lot of energy to focus on that, because I'm so used to going back to my default emotions. So as that clarity comes, and as that sense of freedom comes, that sense of lightness comes, and empowerment, I mean, it all sounds so cliche, but it is so true, then that's when this third thought came into my head, that I had to speak my truth. Not only did I need to know what I want, but I needed to ask for it and speak what it is that I knew or felt was true for me. And that too is a clincher, because for so often, for many of us in our lives, we've been taught to shut our mouths and to just follow along and just do what everyone else is doing, because eventually you'll get it. It's like, getting into a relationship thinking that, well, someday they'll love me if I just do. And then it doesn't happen. And so what happens, we end up pissed off and mad and angry that life didn't turn out the way we wanted it. And so I think if anything from this experience I wanted to share is that we have so much power to overcome these challenges, these default emotions that send out so much negativity to the people around us, to even our environment. And so another huge thing that came to my thoughts too was that the more I focus on why something is happening, the more it disempowers me. Because what it's doing is it's keeping that thought, that even just the mere word of anger in my mind would create experiences that would give me a reason to keep it at the forefront of my mind. So no matter what anybody did, it would keep me angry. Now, I will say this, default emotions aren't bad. I don't want to give that impression. About around that same time, a couple days later, I was at the grocery store, and I had my children with me, and a man came up behind me and got really close to me. He was probably in his late 50s. He put his hand on my waist and started talking nicely into my ear about how cute my little girl was. Well, I tend to try and be nice to older people, but I got these vibes in me that said, this guy's a pervert. And I turned around, we're in a line in a grocery store, there's actually 3 or 4 long lines around me, and I turned to this man. This is where my anger came in and empowered me to turn around and say, I don't know you, but you better take a few steps back. And he did. And I got a lot of stares, believe me, and really give a monkey's butt what anybody thought of me, but I knew that I'd stepped into my power at that moment, and that's what that's for. But when I start using my default emotion as a way of coping with everything just to avoid the raw underlying emotions that are going to mold me into something that is so powerful, then that's when it starts to become debilitating and crippling. So thank you for listening, and I really hope that this empowers you, in your desire to overcome those default emotions or behaviors that keep you stuck and that keep you asking the why question. Stop the whys, drop the whys, because we can go back and blame our mom or dad or aunt or uncle, the abuse, whatever it was. Nothing's going to change. It's what can I do with it now to make myself more empowered? So thanks for listening, everybody.